The chandeliers above the Grand Hilton Dubai glimmered like frozen waterfalls, 1,000 shards of glass suspended mid-air. Each droplet of light bounced across marble floors polished to a mirror, reflecting tuxedos, designer gowns, and the soft rustle of wealth. At table 1 sat Graham Ford, energy billionaire, philanthropist on magazine covers, predator in the boardroom, a man whose smile could seal deals or slice hearts. Tonight, he hosted an exclusive fundraiser for his foundation, Water to the World, a lavish display of charity where the wine cost more than most people's monthly wages. His daughter Issa sat beside him, 22, studying international relations at Oxford, bright, elegant, and quietly observant. Across the table sat Senator Brooks, the American diplomat who never met a camera he didn't love, and Ambassador Lydia Grant, famed for her cool grace and iron policy hand. Beside them was Nick Harper, media mogul with hair as slick as his deals, and Clara Price, the socialite whose pearls jingled whenever she laughed too loudly. The room buzzed with champagne and self-importance. And in the center of this hive of privilege, moving with care and quiet precision, was Sarah Collins. She was 25, American by birth, black by identity, and tired by necessity. Her hair was neatly pinned into a low bun. Her apron, ironed so stiff you could hear the crease when she moved. Her eyes were a deep hazel that caught the light like burnished wood, and above her left eyebrow a thin scar, the remnant of a car accident that had taken her father when she was 8. She was not meant to be here tonight. Another waitress had called out sick at the last minute. Sarah, who usually worked day shifts at the hotel cafe, had been asked to cover. Just one evening, the manager had said. VIP guest. Good tips, but money wasn't optional. Her mother was in a hospital back home in Virginia, fighting a rare autoimmune disease. Earlier that day, Sarah had received a message from the insurance company. Claim denied again. She had read it between orders, her fingers tight around her phone as if squeezing it might change the words. Now, as she walked the floor with the silver tray balanced on her palm, those 2 words echoed like a drumbeat beneath every step. The mockery Graham Ford leaned back in his chair as Sarah approached with the wine list. His gray-blue eyes studied her with the same clinical amusement he used on numbers, not unkind but calculating. Read for me, he said without looking at the menu. Then in fluent Arabic he added to his guests, his voice low and taunting. A lowly creature like her dares touch my crystal glass. The words floated across the table like perfume, sweet to some, toxic to others. A few laughed. Clara covered her mouth. Nick smirked. Even the senator chuckled behind his napkin. They assumed Sarah couldn't understand. Sarah felt the heat rise in her chest. She knew the language well. She had studied Arabic for 4 years at Georgetown under Professor Yusuf al-Hassan, a linguist who taught her that words are weapons and bridges. Use them wisely. She had worked in Beirut for 6 months before her mother fell ill. The language was not foreign to her. It was a second home. She bowed slightly, set the glass down without a tremor, and straightened slowly. Then, in flawless Arabic, her voice clear and steady, she replied, "The crystal glass does not lower the one who holds it. It reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it." The silence, the entire table froze. A fork dropped. Someone coughed. Even the music seemed to pause mid-note. Ambassador Grant was the first to speak, her voice a whisper. She understands Arabic. Dr. Thomas Hale, the gray-templed scholar of Middle Eastern languages, blinked in awe. That was al-Mutanabi, he murmured. Quoted perfectly. Sarah met Graham's eyes, not defiant, not timid, just calm. Her stillness was its own power. Graham's daughter Issa bit her lip to hide a smile. For the first time that evening, her father looked off balance. He forced a laugh. Tourist phrases, he said in English. Parrot mimicry. Let's not make it a show. But the moment had shifted. Something invisible cracked open, a wall of prejudice suddenly showing its fault lines. To challenge a woman in a yellow gown named Evelyn Ward lifted her champagne flute. "Come now, Mr. Ford," she teased. "If she's so impressive, let's see what else she's got. Say something else, dear. Something beautiful." Laughter rolled like a lazy wave. Sarah could have walked away. She should have. But then she remembered her mother's message. Claim denied again. And she decided she would not walk away from this. She set the tray down, lifted her chin, and spoke again in Arabic. Not a recitation this time, but a story. There was once a merchant who mocked his servant for speaking truth. He thought truth was cheap, until the day he could no longer buy it. We should treat words as we treat gold. The more you spend them to shame others, the poorer you become. Her voice was steady, each syllable carved with care. Every eye in the room was on her. The waiters near the back paused. Even the band lowered their volume. And Graham, for all his billions and power, had no words. Issa's perspective. Issa had never seen her father look like this, confused, perhaps embarrassed. She had grown up on private jets under the shadow of a man who believed he could buy the world. But tonight a waitress had taught him something he could not buy: humility. Later, as the crowd recovered and the music resumed, Issa found herself watching Sarah work. She noticed the slight limp in her step, the way she balanced her tray with mathematical precision. She watched how Sarah treated every guest with the same grace, even those who had mocked her minutes earlier. Issa thought, people see servants. But what if they serve something greater than we do? Back of house. When the shift ended past midnight, Sarah slipped into the staff locker room. The mirror over the sink was cracked, but she didn't mind. She washed her hands slowly, watching wine stains and fingerprints fade away. Maya Lee, her coworker and roommate, burst in with wide eyes. "Girl, you went viral and don't even know it. Someone at table 3 filmed you." Sarah blinked. "What?" "On TikTok. Arabic Waitress already has like 20,000 views. You look like a queen." Sarah laughed softly, part shock, part fatigue. "I just spoke." "Yeah, but you spoke truth," Maya said, grinning. "Internet loves that." Sarah didn't think much of it. She had work again tomorrow and a mother to call. But in the digital world, stories had their own speed. By morning, the video would cross 1 million views. The next morning, Dubai's sky was a sheet of molten gold when Graham Ford opened his phone. He was accustomed to headlines and about his business, his donations, his divorces. But this time the headline had his name next to a different word. "Billionaire mocks black waitress. Gets schooled in Arabic." His jaw tightened. He scrolled through the comments, thousands of them. Some condemned him, some celebrated Sarah. Others turned the moment into a debate about privilege and respect. He slammed the phone down. "Get my PR team." Meanwhile, Sarah walked to the metro station with her uniform folded in her bag. Her mother had texted a simple heart emoji after seeing the video shared by a hospital nurse. For the first time in months, her mother had laughed. That was worth more than any tip. Part 1. Closing scene later that evening. As Sarah returned for another shift, she was stopped at the staff entrance by the same security guard who had barely looked at her before. Now he nodded respectfully. "Miss Collins," she paused, a hint of a smile on her lips. Not because she wanted fame or validation, but because for the first time, the world was listening to someone like her. And in a luxury hotel built on money, a waitress had used nothing but words to build a moment that would last longer than gold. As she walked into the kitchen, she didn't see Issa Ford standing in the lobby watching her go. The billionaire's daughter had an idea, an invitation that would soon change Sarah's life forever. The story was only beginning. The sun had barely risen over Dubai when the world already knew her name. Sarah Collins, the Arabic-speaking waitress who humbled a billionaire, was everywhere. Clips from shaky phone cameras flooded TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Within hours, hashtags like Arabic Waitress, Respect All Jobs, and Humility Lesson trended across continents. In the video, her calm words were subtitled by hundreds of strangers. "The crystal glass does not lower the one who holds it. It reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it." Comment sections overflowed with admiration. This gave me chills. Education and grace will always silence arrogance. The billionaire's face when she replied, "Priceless." Sarah, however, woke up late, exhausted from the double shift. She didn't know she had become an international headline. The morning shock, her roommate Maya Lee barged into the small apartment's bedroom waving a phone. "Sarah, you're all over the internet. Like, everywhere. CNN, Al Jazeera, even BBC picked it up." Sarah blinked, still half asleep. "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" Maya thrust the screen toward her. "Look." There she was, her own face frozen mid-sentence on someone's video thumbnail. The caption read, "Waitress shuts down billionaire in Arabic. You'll cry at what she said. Sarah covered her face. Oh my God, please tell me this is fake. It's not. Look, on 10 million views. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. 10 what? Maya sat beside her. Girl, you went viral overnight. And everyone's praising you. Even Arab language pages are calling you al-Karama, mother of dignity. Sarah laughed weakly. That's poetic. Maya tilted her head. You don't seem excited, Sarah sighed. Because viral things burn fast. And I still have bills and a mom who needs medication. Internet fame doesn't pay hospital costs. But even as she said it, her phone began to buzz endlessly, messages, calls and emails from reporters, influencers, and strangers who said her story restored faith in humanity. The billionaire's office across the city, inside the 40th floor of Ford Energy headquarters, Graham Ford was in a very different mood. He stood at his desk, the Dubai skyline blazing behind him like molten steel. His PR team sat around the long glass table, tense, quiet, waiting for him to explode. On the massive screen behind him were headlines. American billionaire's racist remark goes viral. Black waitress silences CEO with fluent Arabic. Privilege meets poetry, the Dubai dinner incident. Turn that off, Graham said coldly. The screen blinked dark. His assistant hesitated. Sir, it's spreading faster than we can. I said off. His voice thundered and everyone froze. He rubbed his temples. Who leaked the video? Sir, it wasn't leaked. Guests recorded it publicly. Multiple angles. Wonderful, he muttered. So now I'm the face of global arrogance. A PR manager cleared his throat. We can issue a public apology. Maybe invite her for a meeting. Offer a statement of reconciliation. Graham shot him a look. Invite a waitress to my office? Sir, the manager said carefully, you don't have a choice. The world already thinks you're a monster. If you ignore this, it will destroy your image. Graham's jaw tightened. Fine, arrange it. But make it look generous, not desperate. He turned to the window, staring at his own reflection in the glass. A man who had built an empire but lost control of one dinner table. Behind him, Issa stood silently. She had been listening the whole time. The daughter's conviction. Issa stepped forward. Dad, maybe don't make this about saving face. Graham frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe, just maybe, you should mean the apology. Not perform it, Issa, he said, his tone softening slightly. You're young. You don't understand business. This is optics. No, she said quietly. This is humanity. Their eyes met. For the first time, she didn't look away. Graham sighed. You think I'm a villain now, don't you? I think you're better than the man who said those words, she replied. Or at least, I want to believe you are. That struck something deep. For a brief second, Graham's mask cracked. He looked tired and older than his years. He waved a hand. Set up the meeting. I'll apologize. Issa nodded, but inside she knew this was more than an apology. This was a chance to test whether her father could truly change. The meeting invitation, Sarah received the email 2 days later. From Issa Ford, Assistant Director, Ford Energy Foundation. Subject, invitation to discuss water to the world. Campaign. The message was polite, formal and surprisingly respectful. Dear Ms. Collins, I hope this message finds you well. I am reaching out personally on behalf of my father, Mr. Graham Ford. We would like to invite you for a private meeting to discuss a potential collaboration. Please know that this is not about the viral incident, but about shared values we believe you represent. Dignity, education, and global understanding. Best regards, Issa Ford. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment. Maya leaned over her shoulder. Girl, that's the billionaire's daughter. I know, Sarah murmured. But why me? Because you showed class when he didn't. You made him look human again. Sarah shook her head. No, I don't want to be part of a PR stunt. But something about Issa's tone, polite, personal, genuine, made her pause. Maybe this wasn't about saving face. Maybe it was about something real. She closed her eyes and remembered her mother's voice on the phone last night, weak, but proud. Baby, you stood up for yourself with grace. That's what your daddy would have wanted. Sarah typed back, thank you. Ms. Ford, I'll be there. It's the encounter. The meeting was set at the Burj Al Noor, a private corporate suite overlooking the sea. When Sarah arrived, she wore a modest cream blouse, black slacks, and her mother's old pearl earrings. She looked professional, composed, a far cry from the uniform she'd worn that night. The receptionist greeted her kindly, almost reverently. Word had spread. Inside the boardroom, Issa stood to greet her. "Ms. Collins, thank you for coming," Sarah smiled. "Please call me Sarah. Then you must call me Issa." Their handshake was warm, sincere, two women from different worlds connected by a shared understanding of respect. Moments later, Graham Ford entered. He was wearing a dark blue suit, no tie, his expression controlled but uncertain. Sarah turned to face him. The air seemed to thicken. "Ms. Collins," he began, his voice lower than usual. "Thank you for coming. I owe you an apology, not just for my words, but for my ignorance." Sarah nodded slowly, saying nothing. "I've built my life on assumptions," he continued. "That money defines respect. That class defines worth. You shattered that illusion in front of the world, and I deserved it." There was a long silence. Then Sarah said gently, "It wasn't about humiliating you, Mr. Ford. It was about reminding everyone that respect should never be optional." Graham's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Wise words. You sound like my daughter," Issa chuckled softly. "Told you she's brilliant," Sarah smiled faintly. "Your daughter's the one who invited me. That says more about her than me." For the first time, Graham laughed genuinely. Maybe we both have something to learn from her. A new offer after. The tension eased. Issa slid a folder toward Sarah. "We've been running a literacy and language education project under our foundation. It's aimed at empowering migrant workers in the UAE, teaching English, Arabic, and financial literacy. We think you'd be perfect to lead the communication outreach." Sarah blinked.
"Me? Yes," Issa said.
"Your grace under pressure inspired millions. You're educated, multilingual, and understand what it's like to be underestimated." Graham nodded. "We want to turn that viral moment into something meaningful, something that actually helps people." Sarah hesitated. "I appreciate it, but I'm not sure I'm the right person." "I'm just a waitress." Issa leaned forward. "No, Sarah, you're a bridge between worlds that rarely listen to each other." Those words struck her deeply. She thought of the guests who had mocked her, the millions of viewers who had felt seen, and her mother who always told her, "When God gives you a voice, don't whisper." Sarah smiled softly. "All right, I'll do it." 7 backlash and strength nod. Everyone was pleased. The internet, fickle as ever, turned debates into storms. Some accused Sarah of selling out. Others praised her for turning pain into purpose. Reporters flooded the hotel trying to get interviews. Paparazzi hounded her commute. But Sarah refused to let any of it shake her focus. She started working at the foundation within a week, not as a token, but as a leader. She helped design community workshops connecting migrant women with language tutors. She used her story to open doors for those who had none. The first time she stood before a class of housemaids from Kenya, Nepal, and the Philippines, she said, "Never let anyone tell you your accent is a weakness. It's the sound of your courage." The women clapped and some cried. In that moment, Sarah realized maybe the viral fame was never punishment or pity. Maybe it was purpose. The transformation, meanwhile, Graham began changing too. Slowly, awkwardly, but sincerely. He visited the foundation's classrooms one afternoon and saw women practicing Arabic phrases Sarah had taught them. He watched her walk among them, guiding, encouraging, translating. Something stirred inside him, a humility he hadn't felt in decades. That night he called Issa. "You were right. She's extraordinary." Issa smiled through the phone. "So are you, Dad, when you choose to listen?" He paused. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" "She already has. You just have to forgive yourself." Fame is a fickle friend. It gives you light, and then tests whether you can bear the heat. It had been 6 months since Sarah Collins stood in Geneva, applauded as a global voice for dignity. Her face had appeared on magazine covers, TEDx posters, and international panels. She'd become the waitress who changed the world, the modern parable of humility versus hubris. But as her influence grew, so did the shadows that followed it. The weight of the world. Sarah woke up one morning to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop, hundreds of notifications. She blinked at the screen. Influencer caught lying about her education? Waitress's backstory doesn't add up? Her stomach tightened. She scrolled through endless posts dissecting her past, where she studied, what she earned, whether she had truly worked in Beirut. The internet had turned skeptical, hungry for a flaw to feed on. In one video, a self-proclaimed investigative blogger accused her of fabricating her Arabic fluency for sympathy. He even showed a blurred college record claiming she had dropped out. Maya called within minutes. "Girl, don't look at that garbage. They're just jealous," Sarah exhaled. "Still, it hurts. I worked for this. I studied every night after cafe shifts. They don't know." Maya's voice softened. "You know the truth. And the people you help, they know too. That's what matters." Sarah nodded, but her heart ached. The spotlight that once felt warm now burned her skin. A private doubt at the Ford Energy Foundation, where Sarah worked as director of education programs. Whispers began circulating. Some staffers murmured, "She's here because of the viral thing." Others rolled their eyes when her name came up in meetings. One day, during a strategy briefing, a senior advisor named Martin Cole said coldly, "Perhaps we should hire someone with real credentials to manage donor relations." Sarah froze. Isa shot him a sharp look. "Mr. Cole, Sarah is our credentials. Her work speaks louder than any degree." Martin smirked. "Emotion isn't a qualification, Miss Ford." Before Isa could reply, a voice interrupted from the doorway. "Then perhaps empathy should be," said Graham Ford himself, stepping in. The room went silent. He looked at Martin, expression firm. "Sarah's project has doubled our engagement in 6 months. I value results, not resumes." Martin muttered something under his breath but went quiet. Sarah glanced at Graham. Gratitude and surprise mingled in her eyes. He gave a faint nod, a silent acknowledgement. "You're not alone in this." The invitation from Beirut. That evening, as Sarah reviewed reports, an email pinged into her inbox. It was from Professor Yusuf Al-Hassan, her old mentor from Georgetown, the man who had taught her Arabic. "My dear Sarah, I have followed your journey with pride. The University of Beirut is hosting a conference on language and dignity and social change. Would you consider being our keynote speaker? The world has heard your story, but our students need to hear your wisdom." Sarah's heart leapt. Beirut, the place where she had first fallen in love with Arabic culture and compassion. She typed her reply without hesitation. "Yes, I'd be honored." Old wounds, new eyes. When the plane descended over Beirut, Sarah felt an ache she hadn't expected. She remembered her father's death, her mother's illness, the years of struggle, and yet she also remembered hope. Professor Yusuf greeted her at the airport, his beard grayer but his eyes still kind. "Ah, my star student returns," he said warmly. "And now the world knows your name." Sarah smiled shyly. "I didn't plan for any of this, Professor," he chuckled. "The most powerful lessons are unplanned. Come, you have much to see." They drove through the city, bustling streets, fragrant shawarma stalls, children chasing footballs. Everywhere she looked, she saw stories. Of hardship, yes, but also resilience. That night at her hotel, Sarah drafted her speech for the next day. She titled it, "Words That Heal." But fate, as always, had other plans. The whispering storm, the next morning, just hours before her speech, she received a message from an unknown number. "Stop lying about your past, Waitress. We know you never graduated." Attached was a photo, her old student record from Georgetown showing incomplete in the final semester. Sarah froze. It was true, she hadn't technically graduated. She had dropped out her final year to care for her mother after the diagnosis. Her professors had tried to convince her to stay, but she couldn't. Family came first. Now that personal sacrifice was being used as a weapon. She sat on the hotel bed, trembling. "They'll think I lied." When Isa called to check in, Sarah hesitated but confessed everything. Isa's voice was calm but firm. "You didn't lie. You lived. You made a choice. And that choice saved your mother. Tell the world that truth." Sarah took a shaky breath. "You think they'll understand?" "They will if you make them feel it," Isa said. "Like you made them feel that night with one sentence in Arabic." The speech that broke the internet, again. That afternoon, Sarah walked onto the stage of the American University of Beirut. Facing a hall full of scholars, students, and journalists, she began softly. I was supposed to stand here today as Miss Collins, graduate of Georgetown. But the truth is, I didn't graduate. A ripple went through the room. She continued. Steady and open, I left school to take care of my mother. For years I thought that made me a failure. But standing here I realize, education doesn't end when you leave a classroom. It begins when life tests what you've learned. The hall was silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The world called me a liar this week. But I am no liar. I am someone who chose love over labels, duty over degrees, and truth over image. If that makes me unqualified, and so be it. Because the best teacher I ever had was my mother, who taught me that dignity never needs a diploma. Applause thundered through the hall. People stood. Some wept. A student shouted, "You're our hero." That moment was captured by every camera in the room, and within hours it went viral again. This time not as scandal, but as redemption. The meeting in the garden later that evening, Graham and Issa arrived in Beirut. They had flown in secretly to support Sarah. They met her in the hotel garden under soft lanterns. The air smelled of jasmine and sea salt. Graham approached quietly. "I watched your speech," he said. "You didn't defend yourself. You elevated yourself." Sarah smiled faintly. "I just told the truth," he nodded. "And that truth saved me too. I used to think money was the only shield against shame. But watching you today, I realized humility is the stronger armor." Issa added gently, "You taught him more than any business partner ever has." Sarah chuckled softly. "Then maybe my job's done." Graham shook his head. "No, Sarah, it's just beginning." He reached into his jacket and handed her a letter. "The Ford Foundation Board has approved a global education initiative, in your name. The Collins Fellowship, funding young people who had to abandon education for family or financial reasons. It's your vision. We just made it real." Sarah's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. "You named it after me?" Graham smiled. "You earned it. You gave the world back its conscience." The return home months later, Sarah returned to the U.S. to visit her mother, who was recovering beautifully. The hospital room was filled with flowers, letters, and cards from strangers around the world. One card read, "Because of you, I went back to school at 40. Her mother held her hand.
You see, baby?
The same girl who once served wine now serves hope. Sarah laughed through tears. "I just wish Dad could see this." Her mother squeezed her fingers. "Oh, he does. Every time you choose grace over anger, he's right there." The TV interview, a few weeks later, Sarah appeared on an American talk show. The host, a charismatic anchor named David Pierce, smiled as he asked, "Sarah, you've gone from waitress to global ambassador. What's the biggest lesson fame has taught you?" Sarah thought for a moment. "That people don't remember what you own. They remember how you made them feel." The audience applauded. David leaned forward. "And what would you say to that billionaire today if you could go back to that dinner night?" She smiled softly. "I'd say thank you." The audience gasped. Sarah continued, "Because that moment taught both of us something. His words tested my worth and my response tested his humanity. We both passed, eventually." The crowd stood, applauding again. Backstage, Graham watched the live broadcast from his office. He didn't smile. He wiped a tear. Ken. The final letter weeks later, Sarah received a handwritten letter from Graham. "Dear Sarah, I used to think wealth was power. Now I know it's responsibility. You reminded me that the real legacy of a man isn't in his companies, but in the lives he changes. Thank you for changing mine, Graham." Sarah read it in silence, then folded it gently and placed it beside her mother's framed photo. She whispered, "We did it, Dad." Outside her window, the city lights shimmered, reflections of stories she had yet to tell. Part 3. Closing scene. The final shot, Sarah walking down a busy New York street, head held high, people recognizing her and smiling. She doesn't stop for photos. She just smiles back, one hand touching the small scar above her brow. A narrator's voice fades in. She was mocked for serving crystal. But in the end, she became the mirror, showing the world what dignity truly looks like. The camera pans upward, city lights blending into stars, fade out. 1. The global spark 2 years after the viral night in Dubai, Sarah Collins had become a household name. The Collins Fellowship, a global program funding education for those who left school for family or financial reasons, was now active in 17 countries. From the Philippines to Kenya, from Jordan to Colombia, hundreds of young men and women were learning to read, write, and rebuild their dreams. Everywhere she went, people recognized her, not as a celebrity but as a symbol. Yet success, like wealth, has its shadows, because for every person she inspired, there were others waiting to benefit from her light. The boardroom warning at the Ford Energy Foundation headquarters. The boardroom gleamed with glass and gold. Screens displayed data, donations, outreach, metrics. Sarah stood at the head of the table beside Issa Ford, now co-director of the foundation. Across from them sat a panel of trustees, mostly older men in expensive suits. Sarah pointed at a chart. If we allocate more funds to vocational training, we can double literacy rates by next year. A trustee interrupted. Ms. Collins, admirable, but these workshops are costly. Donors prefer visible impact, videos, media, photos. Sarah frowned. So you want publicity, not progress? Murmurs rippled. Another man, Martin Cole, the same advisor who once belittled her, leaned forward. You're forgetting, Sarah, that publicity is progress. People donate to emotion, not spreadsheets. Issa interjected. That's not what our mission is about, Martin. He smiled thinly. Mission doesn't pay the bills, Miss Ford. Sarah clenched her jaw. The room felt colder now. After the meeting, Issa caught up with her in the hallway. You okay? Sarah exhaled. I can handle arrogance. What I can't handle is hypocrisy. Issa nodded. You're not alone. My father's been feeling it too. Read the Billionaire's regret. That evening, Graham Ford sat alone in his study. The world outside glittered through the glass, but inside, he felt a strange emptiness. On his desk lay a report. Ford Energy under investigation for environmental negligence in West Africa. He rubbed his temples. Years of progress, and now this. He had been working to transform his company's image, clean energy, ethical business, but old sins die slowly. His phone buzzed. It was Issa. Dad, Sarah's under pressure from the board, and now this article about our energy projects is resurfacing. Graham sighed. Tell her to stay focused on the foundation. I'll handle the company, but deep down, he knew Sarah's light and his shadow were now entangled. If his past came to light, it could destroy everything she had built. The whisper of corruption weeks later, during a routine financial audit, Sarah noticed something strange. One of the fellowship's branch budgets in Nigeria listed a $2.5 million media grant. She frowned. That grant didn't exist. She called the local coordinator. Can you confirm this fund? The man hesitated. Ma'am, that money was approved by headquarters. Mr. Cole signed it. Her stomach tightened. For what purpose? Promotional campaign. But no materials ever arrived. Sarah's voice hardened. Thank you. Please don't discuss this with anyone yet. She ended the call and stared at the figures on her laptop. Someone was embezzling funds. In her name. The confrontation. The next morning, Sarah walked straight into Martin Cole's office. He was sipping espresso, smug as ever. Ms. Collins, you seem upset. Where's the missing $2.5 million? He didn't flinch. Reallocated for strategic exposure. Exposure? You mean theft, he smirked. Careful, Sarah. That's a heavy word for someone who came from serving tables. Sarah stepped closer. And yet it's people like me who keep your conscience in check. His expression darkened. You think this foundation runs on your ideals? It runs on donors. Donors I bring you. You're a face, a story. Don't confuse that with power. Sarah's eyes blazed. Then let's see whose story people believe. She turned and left, heart pounding. The betrayal that evening, headlines broke online. Insider claims misuse of funds in Collins Fellowship. Did Sarah Collins's program funnel millions for PR? Sarah's phone exploded. Emails, calls, reporters, hashtags Maya called, panicked. Sarah, they're saying you approved those transfers. What? No. Someone leaked fake emails with your signature. It's everywhere. Sarah's breath caught. Her world began to tilt. Within hours, donors began pulling out. Social media, once her ally, turned vicious. Another fake humanitarian. She fooled us all. She sat on her apartment floor, shaking. They're destroying everything. and in the quiet between phone vibrations she whispered, "God." "Please, not again." 7. Issa's stand at Ford headquarters. Issa stormed into her father's office. "Dad, Martin's behind this. He forged Sarah's approval." Graham looked grim. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I'll get it," he stood. "Then we'll get it together. I won't let her reputation burn because of my company's corruption." For the first time, Issa saw fear in her father's eyes, not fear of failure, but fear of losing the right person to believe in him. The hidden file days later, Issa and Graham dug through old financial archives. They discovered an encrypted email trail from Martin Cole to offshore accounts using Sarah's fellowship codes. It was damning, but before they could report it, the media struck again. A leaked video showed Graham arguing with Sarah at an event weeks earlier. The clip was edited to make it look like she accused him of stealing funds. The caption, "Hypocrite billionaire versus his protege. Foundation crumbles, the damage was nuclear." Sarah was summoned by investigators. Reporters hounded her. She stopped leaving her apartment. The breaking point one night, Sarah stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights. Her phone lay silent for once. She whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong in their world." Her mother called just then. "Sweetheart?" Sarah's voice broke. "Mom, they're tearing me apart. Everything we built." "Gone." Her mother was silent for a moment, then softly said, "Do you remember what you told that man years ago? The crystal glass reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it. Don't let them stain your reflection, baby." "You're still that glass." Sarah closed her eyes. Tears falling, those words steadied her. She made a decision. If they wanted truth, she would give it to them, publicly. The press conference, the next morning, Sarah walked into a hall packed with reporters. Flashbulbs blazed. She wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. At the podium, her voice was calm. 2 years ago, I was mocked for being a waitress. I stood up with words, not anger. Today I stand again, not to defend my name, but to defend the truth." She held up a printed document. "These are the real records, showing that Mr. Martin Cole approved unauthorized transfers. My signature was forged." "The audit trail is clear," gasps echoed. "I don't fear losing fame or position. I only fear losing integrity, because that's the only currency that never devalues." Her voice trembled only once, and when she said, "To every donor, student, and worker who trusted me, I'm still here. I won't disappear into silence." As she stepped back, flashes erupted. The world, once again, was listening. The fallout: by evening, Martin Cole had been arrested for fraud and cyber manipulation. Evidence recovered from his laptop confirmed Sarah's innocence. Graham called her immediately. "Sarah, I failed you. I let snakes sit at my table," Sarah sighed. "Then use your power to build better tables." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I'll do." The next day, Ford Energy pledged $100 million to expand the Collins Fellowship into Africa and South America. And once again, the internet reversed its tone. She didn't fall. She fought. Sarah Collins proves integrity still matters. A quiet victory that night. Sarah sat by the sea in Dubai, the same city where it had all begun. The wind was warm, the waves whispering like old friends. Issa joined her quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Remember when you said this story was just beginning?" Sarah asked. Issa smiled. "It still is." Sarah looked out at the horizon. "I used to think dignity was about words. Now I think it's about what you do when no one believes you." Issa nodded. "And you did the hardest thing. You believed in yourself." They clinked their teacups like champagne glasses. The billionaire's reflection at home. Graham stood before the mirror in his study. He saw the same man who once sneered at a waitress, and yet, he no longer recognized him. On his desk was a small frame, a photo from Geneva, Sarah, Issa, and him smiling together after the global forum. He whispered to his reflection, "She changed me more than money ever could." Then, for the first time in years, he turned off his phone and simply watched the sunset. The message from a stranger a week later. Sarah received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was neat, the return address unfamiliar. Lagos, Nigeria. "Dear Ms. Collins, I was one of the girls in your first literacy class. I saw what they said about you online and I prayed for you. When I heard you fought back with truth, I decided not to give up either. I'm now teaching others to read. If you ever doubt your purpose, remember us, the ones you'll never meet, but who live freer because you spoke. With love, Amara. Sarah pressed the letter to her heart, smiling through tears. Part 4, closing scene. The final shot fades in like a film ending. Sarah walking down the beach at sunrise, barefoot, her reflection shimmering in the water. A voiceover echoes softly. Once upon a time, a billionaire mocked a waitress for touching crystal. Years later, the same waitress held the world's respect in her hands. She never sought power. She sought peace and then found both. Camera pans up and sunlight breaking across the waves. Music swells. 1. The foundation of hope 3 years later. The Collins Fellowship had transformed from a small foundation into a global movement. In classrooms from Nairobi to Karachi, children and adults studied under banners that read, "Education is the language of dignity." Sarah Collins, once a waitress mocked at a dinner table, was now the founder and director of the Global Dignity Initiative, a coalition of NGOs working for education equality. But she never let the fame sit too long. Every success was met with humility. Every spotlight turned toward others. She often told her team, "We're not here to be famous. We're here to be useful." And in her quiet office overlooking Dubai Creek, she still kept one thing pinned on the wall, the photo of her mother smiling from her hospital bed, holding a sign that read, "My daughter taught the world to listen." The speech of a lifetime, an invitation arrived from the United Nations. Dear Ms. Collins, the UN Global Summit on Equality and Justice would be honored to have you deliver the keynote address this year. Your story represents resilience, respect, and reconciliation. Values our divided world desperately needs. Sarah stared at the letter for a long while. It was surreal, from serving wine to speaking before world leaders. When she told Issa, her friend screamed with joy. "You're going to the UN, Sarah. Do you realize how huge that is?" Sarah smiled, though her heart was steady. "If I'm going to stand on that stage, I want to speak not as someone who made it, but as someone who never forgot where she started." Ghosts of the past, but the higher she climbed, the more she felt the ghosts of her past calling. That night, alone in her apartment, she opened a drawer filled with old keepsakes, her apron tag from the Grand Hilton, her name badge, her mother's hospital bills, and a yellowed napkin on which she had once scribbled her first Arabic verse. Her eyes lingered on the napkin. "The crystal glass does not lower the one who holds it," she whispered the line softly. That moment, the mockery, the humiliation, the reply had started everything. But she had never seen Graham Ford again since the scandal cleared. He had vanished from public life, stepping down as CEO of Ford Energy, leaving Issa to lead. Rumor said he was ill. Part of Sarah wanted to forget. Another part needed closure. The visit 2 weeks later, Issa called. Her voice trembled. "Sarah, Dad isn't well. He's been asking for you." Sarah froze. "Me? Yes, he's in his estate in Morocco. Please come. I think he needs to make peace, and so do you." Sarah hesitated, then whispered, "Send me the address." The journey Morocco was wrapped in gold that evening. The sky bled orange over the Atlas Mountains as Sarah's car wound through olive groves to the old Ford villa. Inside, silence reigned, broken only by the tick of a distant clock. Issa met her at the door, eyes red from crying. "He's in the library." Sarah's breath shook as she entered. There, sitting near the window, was Graham Ford, thinner, paler, but with eyes that still held that sharp intelligence now softened by time. He smiled weakly. "You came," Sarah nodded. "You asked," he chuckled, a frail sound. "I wasn't sure you'd forgive me." She pulled a chair close. "I did, a long time ago." He studied her face, his eyes glistening. "I've lived with regret, Sarah. Not because I mocked you, though I deserved every ounce of shame, but because I nearly ruined something beautiful you built. You believed in a better world when I didn't." Sarah's eyes softened. "Maybe that's why we met, so we could remind each other of what matters." He reached for her hand. "Do you know what's funny? That night when you spoke Arabic, I understood every word. I just pretended not to." Sarah blinked. "You did?" He smiled sadly. "Pride makes fools fluent in silence." Tears welled in her eyes. "You could have apologized then." I wasn't ready, he said quietly. But I am now, she squeezed his hand gently. Then let that be enough. Gagged. The last lesson over the next days, Sarah stayed at the villa, helping Isa care for her father. They talked about life, humility, and redemption. He told her stories of his youth, how poverty had hardened him, how wealth had blinded him. One evening he said, "People think success changes you. It doesn't. It just reveals who you already are." She smiled. "And who are you now?" He chuckled softly, a man who finally learned to listen. Before she left, he handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a crystal glass, the same brand he had mocked her for touching. "A reminder," he said, "that the glass never lowered you. It lowered me." She pressed it to her heart. "Thank you, Graham," he smiled. "No thank you, Sarah. You gave me something my billions never could. Peace." The goodbye. 2 months later, Graham Ford passed away peacefully in his sleep. The news spread quietly. He had left most of his fortune to educational programs and the Collins Fellowship. At the memorial, Isa delivered the eulogy. "My father taught me ambition. Sarah taught me compassion. Between the two, I found my purpose." Sarah stood in the back, tears streaming silently. Afterward, Isa embraced her tightly. "He wanted you to have something." She handed Sarah a sealed envelope. Inside was a note in Graham's handwriting. "To the waitress who taught a billionaire to kneel. Never let the world forget, respect is the truest form of wealth." F7. The UN summit months later, Sarah walked into the grand hall of the United Nations headquarters in New York City. The room was filled with leaders, ministers, and delegates from around the world. Cameras flashed. As she stepped onto the stage wearing a modest navy gown, a hush fell over the room. She began in Arabic, softly, beautifully. "Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you." Then she switched to English. "Years ago I was mocked for the color of my skin, for my uniform, for my place in the world. I answered not with anger but with dignity. I've learned since then that humanity's greatest strength is not power, it's compassion. The ability to see someone beneath you and choose to lift them instead." She paused, her gaze steady. "I once served crystal glasses to the wealthy. Today I serve hope to the world. But the truth is both are fragile. Handle both with care." The audience erupted in applause. Some stood. Others wiped tears, and among them sat Isa, smiling with pride. The full circle. After the summit, Sarah returned home to Virginia for the first time in years. Her mother's health had stabilized. The house smelled of jasmine tea and fresh bread. They sat on the porch as the sun set, warm light painting their faces. Her mother smiled. "You look different, baby." Sarah laughed softly. "Older? Wiser, happier. You finally found peace, didn't you?" Sarah nodded. "I think I did." Her mother sipped her tea. "So what now? You've spoken to presidents, built schools, changed hearts. What comes next?" Sarah looked at the horizon. "Now, I teach others to do the same." Seeds of Tomorrow. The next year, the Collins Fellowship opened its first independent academy, the House of Voices, a sanctuary for young people who had been silenced by poverty, prejudice, or circumstance. The opening ceremony drew hundreds. As Sarah cut the ribbon, she said, "This place isn't mine. It's yours. For every child who was told to stay quiet, for every dream that was laughed at. Speak, learn, rise, and when you reach the top, extend your hand to pull someone else up." Among the crowd was a young girl with a scar above her brow, clutching her mother's hand, a reflection of Sarah years ago. When their eyes met, the girl smiled shyly. Sarah winked. "Your turn now." The epilogue, light upon light years later, when Sarah's name was written in books and her speeches studied in classrooms. People still remembered the story that started it all, not because of the humiliation, but because of the response. A billionaire had mocked a waitress, and the waitress replied with wisdom that outlived them both. In one interview before her retirement, a journalist asked, "Sarah, if you could relive that night, would you change anything?" She smiled. "No, that night gave the world a mirror, and we all saw who we really were." The interviewer asked softly, "And who are we now?" She looked out the window at a world slowly learning to be kind. "Still learning," she said, "but learning beautifully." Final scene. Cinematic ending. Visuals for YouTube narration. A montage of Sarah's journey, serving at the dinner table in Dubai, speaking Arabic under chandeliers, teaching children in dusty classrooms, hugging Isa under a blue sky, holding the crystal glass against the sunlight. Narration fades in softly. She was once mocked for touching crystal. Now her words shine brighter than any glass ever could. Because when dignity speaks, the world listens.